In this week's hypnotic episode of Mob Psycho 100, Mob just barely dodges the advances of a creepy laughing cult, but not before unleashing his raw destructive psychic power, all at 100%. If Saitama is the most powerful superhero, then Mob is the most powerful psychic I have ever seen. His raw destructive power is absolutely insane. In this week's episode, formally explained why he keeps his emotions in check. You see, if he allows himself to get too emotional, he'll lose control of his powers and just start destroying everything. And over the years, this has turned him into something of an emotionless character. However, it's this emotionlessness and this lack of confidence that kind of makes Mob a really unique anime character. In fact, I'd go as far as to say he's one of the coolest main characters that I've seen from just about any big anime series. A lot of the times, the main character is super overconfident, incredibly cocky, and Mob is nothing like that. And if you were to take that away from him, that would sort of get rid of the entire point of Mob Psycho 100. And this week's episode right here was just a lot of fun. Lots of laughs, to say the least. So picking up from last week's episode, we get to see that Mob has decided to ditch the telepathy club and go for the body improvement club, which he's definitely struggling at. I mean, he can barely even keep up with those other guys, but I mean, who can blame him? Those guys look like freaking jacked NFL players. They look like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure characters. On his way home from training, he runs into this weird, mysterious figure wearing a smiling mask, who tries to get Mob to join this cult, which has only been around for about a month. The cult is known as LOL. Get it? It's funny, right? Anywho, the cult is filled with all of these people who wear these really creepy smiling masks, and they're led by this guy who goes by the name of Dimple. Dimple apparently has the psychic ability to make anybody laugh. That is, except for Mob, because he's constantly trying to keep his emotions in check. We also have another major character who is introduced in this episode, another one of Mob's classmates, who goes by the name of Misato. Misato is in charge of the school newspaper, so she's trying to figure out what's going on with this weird and creepy cult. And the episode's hilarious in a sense that the leader of the cult is doing everything in his power to try and make Mob laugh. They actually have this weird ability where he'll put this mask on someone, he'll use his psychic abilities on them, and they'll start to laugh uncontrollably. It's almost as if they were hit by some freaking Joker gas. It works on Misato, but it does not work on Mob. So they start to have this competition where he goes up against random people in the cult, and they have to drink milk and make funny faces at the same time. And it's funny because every single time his opponents just end up laughing and spitting the milk all over Mob's face. And you can tell that this is really starting to piss him off, but he just simply can't show any of this emotion. And that's what's really funny, because as this episode is building up, it's made very apparent that he's going to go 100% and go full-on power. And that's exactly what he does in this episode when Dimple finally decides there's nothing that he can do about this guy, and in order to make his cult powerful, he has got to get rid of him. So they end up having this big psychic battle, and we learn that Dimple is actually this weird, creepy spirit which has been possessing this guy, and he takes the form of this big, muscular, green-looking guy who has bladed arms and all types of big, flashy psychic attacks, and they have this scene where Mob finally goes 100%, and he looks awesome. Like, his hair is constantly going up in the air, his eyes are open and red and creepy looking, and he's just so incredibly destructive. No matter what Dimple throws at him, he just completely wastes his ass. Mob ends up defeating Dimple and ends up saving the day and freeing all of these people from this very disturbing cult. However, at the very end of the episode, he is greeted by a brand new friend who quite literally looks like a little ghost version of Dimple, and if you've seen the intro of the show, it looks like he's probably going to be our resident mascot of the series. But we're going to have to learn a little bit more about him in the next episode of the series. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Mob Psycho 100? Aside from the really great characterization of Mob, and all the funny moments, and all the cool action scenes, I just love the message that they're trying to get across in this episode, which is not to fall into peer pressure. In some ways, Mob has already sort of fallen to peer pressure because he's joined the Body Improvement Club and he's just absolutely terrible at it, and the only reason he's even doing it is so that his childhood love, Tsubomi, will actually notice him. And she happens to be a pretty big linchpin in this episode, which leads to him going 100%, because there's this phrase that she said when he was younger, which is, "get a clue," which just completely sets him off, causing him to go to 100% and throw all of his power all at Dimple in this episode. But I think it is pretty fascinating how you have a character like Mob, who's like not the most popular guy in the world, doesn't have a lot of friends, and still decides that he's not going to join this cult, which otherwise seems pretty enjoyable. I mean, it's just a bunch of people smiling and having a good time. Even Misato falls prey to this. However, you have Mob, who decides that he's not going to go along with the crowd and stick to his guns, stick to what he is good at, which is being a super kick-ass psychic, while still trying to keep his social anxieties and his emotions in check, which is definitely one of the most fun things about this show, is waiting for that moment when Mob is finally going to snap. It happened so quick in this episode, you could tell, despite the fact that he couldn't show that emotion, that he was getting super pissed off in this episode, and he had no problem in displaying his power at the end and defeating Dimple by quite literally just touching him and then his whole body just explodes. The fact that he survived and turned into some sort of weird ghost / fart gas, like, I can't wait to see what this character is going to be all about, and it's really funny, because when he appears at the very end of the episode, since Mob just went to 100% power, he went right back down to 0, but the minute he sees him, he immediately goes right back up to 20, which is the fastest we've seen his emotions grow, so this character is going to be very grating for Mob, and I can't wait to see how he's going to have to learn to live with this character. It's very apparent he's going to be sticking around, and I can't wait to see what his true motives are going to be. That being said, this was a pretty nice episode right here, which has had a really nice dressed-up message on peer pressure, done with a lot of great anime style. It also helps with the show's just incredibly distinctive looking. All of the action scenes look really good. They're super fluid and very explosive. You know, I like to compare this series to One Punch Man a lot, but only because the creator of the series is the same guy who worked on that one, and you can see a lot of the influence there, but it's so different in its own way. So colorful, so explosive, and just frankly fun to watch, and a really funny show in general. The characters just exude so much personality, and that's hilarious because Mob himself really doesn't. And that's really the most fascinating thing about his character. He's unlike any other main character that I've seen in any other anime series. And that's definitely what makes this show worth watching. For the comedy, for the cool action, and getting to see how these characters are going to develop. I'm very interested to see what Mob is going to be like at the end of the series compared to the way he is now. And so what we're looking at this week is another solid episode of Mob Psycho 100. A show that I honestly cannot predict, and that's definitely one of the best things about it. I have no idea what's going to happen each week. I don't read the manga version, so this has been a very fresh anime experience for me, and I'm loving every minute of it. I'm usually not a big fan of comedies, especially when 90% of the show is comedy with only a small amount of action, but the message that they're giving across, and the comedy, the artwork, and the stylings just make this such an amazing, infectious show that you're going to find yourself getting obsessed with. So, comedy fans, action fans, looking for just a good anime fans, check out Mob Psycho 100. It's definitely worth your time. It might even take you back to those old days in high school where things were awkward as shit. So I loved this episode right here. I thought it had some really sharp writing and some great animation moments. So I'm going to give this one right here a 5 out of 5. It was awesome. Check it out, Mob Psycho 100 fans. If any of you did watch this week's episode, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below. Did you have a favorite scene from this episode? Something that made you laugh out loud? What did you think of Mob going 100% with his psychic powers? And what do you want to see from the rest of Mob Psycho 100? Thank you guys for watching this review. I really appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and make sure to like this video and share it with all of your friends. Thank you guys again for watching. And as always, stay dandy, baby.